What if a single act of kindness could change not just one life, but hundreds? Stay tuned because this true story of a waitress, 2 orphans, and a life-changing surprise will leave you speechless. The clatter of plates and the hum of hungry customers filled the small diner in rural Georgia. It was a rainy Tuesday, and the clock had just struck midnight. The neon sign outside flickered in the storm, casting a soft glow through the foggy windows. Inside, Mary, a hardworking waitress with tired eyes and a gentle smile, moved from table to table, refilling coffee cups and clearing away empty plates. She had worked at the diner for years, and though the hours were long and the pay was modest, she took pride in her work and cared for every customer who walked through the door. As Mary wiped down a booth near the window, she caught a glimpse of movement outside. 2 small faces, pale and thin, were pressed against the glass. Their eyes were wide with hunger and hope, and their clothes were soaked through, clinging to their small frames. The boy, who looked to be about 10, had his arm wrapped protectively around his little sister, who couldn't have been more than 6. They shivered in the cold, their breath fogging up the window as they watched the warm, bustling world inside. Mary's heart ached at the sight. She glanced at the plate of half-eaten pancakes she was about to clear away, and suddenly, her own voice rang out, urgent and kind. "Stop! Don't throw that away." She hurried to the kitchen, grabbed the plate, and rushed outside, grabbing an umbrella on her way. The rain was coming down in sheets, but Mary didn't care. She knelt beside the children, shielding them from the storm with her umbrella. "Are you hungry?" she asked softly, her voice barely audible over the rain. The boy nodded, his eyes never leaving the plate of food. He clutched his sister's hand tightly, as if afraid she might be taken from him at any moment. Mary smiled gently, her heart breaking for them. Without another word, she led them inside, guiding them to a corner booth away from the curious eyes of the other customers. She wrapped them in warm towels from the kitchen and brought them steaming mugs of hot chocolate. The children's hands trembled as they wrapped their fingers around the cups, savoring the warmth. Mary set the plate of pancakes in front of them, along with fresh eggs and toast. "Eat as much as you want, sweethearts," she said, her voice full of kindness. The boy hesitated for a moment, glancing at his sister, then began to eat, slowly at first, as if he couldn't believe the food was really for them. The little girl followed his lead, her eyes lighting up with each bite. Mary watched them, her own eyes misty with tears. She didn't ask questions, didn't judge. She simply sat with them, offering gentle words and a comforting presence. As the children ate, Mary learned their names, Tommy and Lily. Between bites, Tommy explained in a quiet voice that their parents had died in a tragic accident months earlier. With no family to take them in, they had been left to fend for themselves, wandering the streets and surviving on scraps. They had slept in abandoned buildings, huddled together for warmth, and gone days without a proper meal. Mary listened, her heart heavy with sorrow for all they had endured. When the children finished eating, Mary brought them more food, insisting they take some with them for later. She paid for their meal out of her own pocket, not thinking twice about the cost. Before they left, she knelt down beside Tommy and pressed a few crumpled dollars into his hand. "Come back if you ever need help," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "You're always welcome here." Tommy looked up at her, his eyes shining with gratitude. "Thank you, ma'am," he said softly. Lily hugged Mary tightly, her small arms wrapped around the waitress's waist. Mary hugged her back, wishing she could do more for them. As the children disappeared into the night, Mary stood at the window, watching them go. The rain had slowed to a gentle drizzle, and the neon sign cast a hopeful glow on the wet pavement. Mary knew she might never see Tommy and Lily again, but she hoped, with all her heart, that her small act of kindness would make a difference in their lives. That night, as she closed up the diner and walked home in the quiet darkness, Mary thought about the 2 orphans she had fed. She wondered where they would sleep, if they would be safe, and if they would ever find a place to call home. She didn't have all the answers, but she knew one thing for certain. Sometimes, the smallest gestures of kindness can mean the world to someone in need. And in that moment, Mary promised herself that she would always help those who needed it most, no matter how small the act or how great the need. Life moved on as it always does. The seasons changed, years slipped quietly by, and the world outside Mary's little diner kept spinning. After that rainy night, Mary never saw Tommy and Lily again. Sometimes, when she was closing up late or wiping down the counter in the quiet hours before dawn, she would find herself thinking about those two small faces pressed against the glass, their eyes wide with hunger and hope. She often wondered what had become of them. Had they found a safe place to sleep? Had someone else shown them kindness? Or had they simply vanished into the endless tide of people who passed through the town, forgotten by all but her? But Mary's own life was busy and the world was big. She had her own children to raise, bills to pay, and a job that demanded every ounce of her energy. The diner was her second home, a place where she spent more hours than she did in her own living room. She worked double shifts, sometimes barely making enough to cover the rent and put food on the table. There were nights when she came home so tired she could barely climb the stairs to her small apartment above the diner. Yet, no matter how exhausted she was, she always made time for her children, helping them with homework, listening to their stories and tucking them in with a kiss. Mary's kindness didn't stop with her own family. She was known throughout the town as someone who would help anyone in need. If a regular customer was short on cash, she'd quietly cover their bill. If a stranger wandered in cold and hungry, she'd find a way to get them a hot meal. She kept a jar of coins behind the counter for anyone who needed bus fare. And she always had a kind word or a gentle smile for those who looked like they were having a rough day. Her generosity was quiet, never boastful, and she never expected anything in return. As the years passed, the diner changed owners more than once. The menu shifted, the decor was updated, and new faces appeared behind the counter. But Mary remained a constant presence, her warm smile and gentle spirit, a comfort to everyone who walked through the door. Her own children grew up, left home, and started families of their own. Mary's hair turned silver, and the lines on her face deepened, but her heart remained as open and generous as ever. Sometimes, when the diner was empty and the rain tapped softly against the windows, Mary would sit in the same corner booth where she had once fed Tommy and Lily. She would close her eyes and remember the way the little girl had hugged her, the way the boy had looked up at her with gratitude shining in his eyes. She wondered if they remembered her, if they ever thought about the woman who had given them a warm meal and a few dollars on a stormy night. She wondered if her small act of kindness had made any difference at all. There were days when Mary doubted herself. The world could be a hard and unforgiving place, and sometimes it felt like her efforts were just a drop in the ocean. She saw people come and go, some struggling, some thriving, and she knew that not everyone could be saved with a plate of pancakes and a kind word. But still she held on to hope. She believed deep down that even the smallest act of kindness could ripple outwards, touching lives in ways she might never see. Mary never spoke about Tommy and Lily to anyone. It was a memory she kept close to her heart, a quiet reminder of the power of compassion. She didn't need recognition or thanks. It was enough to know that, for one night, she had made a difference in the lives of two children who had nowhere else to turn. 18 years passed in the blink of an eye. The town grew and changed, new buildings rose where old ones had stood, and the faces in the diner shifted with the times. Mary grew older, her steps a little slower, her hands a little more worn. But she never lost her warmth, her kindness, or her belief in the goodness of people. And though she never saw Tommy and Lily again, she never forgot them. Their memory lived on in every act of kindness she offered, in every meal she served to someone in need, and in every quiet moment when she wondered if, somewhere out there, her small act of love had helped two lost children find their way home. One sunny afternoon, Mary was kneeling in her small backyard garden, her hands deep in the rich soil as she tended to her beloved tomato plants. The air was warm, filled with the scent of blooming flowers and the gentle hum of bees. It was a peaceful day, the kind Mary cherished in her later years, when the world seemed to slow down just enough for her to catch her breath and enjoy the simple pleasures of life. Suddenly, a strange sound broke the calm, a deep rhythmic thumping that seemed to vibrate through the ground itself. At first, Mary thought it might be a distant train or perhaps some heavy machinery from the construction site down the road. But the noise grew louder, closer, until it was impossible to ignore. The birds scattered from the trees, and the leaves on the branches trembled with each beat. Curious and a little concerned, Mary wiped her hands on her apron and stood up, shading her eyes from the bright afternoon sun. She scanned the sky, searching for the source of the commotion. That's when she saw it. A helicopter gleaming in the sunlight, descending rapidly toward the empty field behind her house. The sight was so unexpected, so out of place in her quiet neighborhood, that for a moment Mary simply stared, unable to process what she was seeing. As the helicopter touched down, the wind from its blades whipped through Mary's garden, sending petals and leaves swirling through the air. The noise was deafening, and soon, neighbors began to emerge from their homes, drawn by the spectacle. Some held up their phones, recording the event, while others simply watched in awe, wondering who could possibly be arriving in such dramatic fashion. The helicopter's engine powered down, and the door swung open with a smooth, practiced motion. Out stepped a tall, well-dressed man in a crisp suit, his hair neatly styled and his posture confident. Beside him was a young woman, elegant and poised, her eyes bright with excitement. There was something familiar about them, something in the way they moved, the way they looked at the world around them. Mary's heart began to race. She felt a strange flutter in her chest, a mix of hope and disbelief. Could it be? After all these years, could it really be them? The man looked around, scanning the crowd of curious neighbors, until his gaze landed on Mary. His face broke into a wide, genuine smile, and he started walking toward her, the young woman close behind. As he approached, Mary saw it. The same eyes, the same smile she had seen so many years ago, pressed against the window of the diner on that stormy night. "Mary," the man called out, his voice strong and clear. "It's me, Tommy. And this is my sister, Lily." For a moment time seemed to stand still. Mary's hands flew to her mouth in shock, her eyes wide with disbelief. Tears welled up, blurring her vision as she looked at the two people standing before her. They were no longer the frightened, hungry children she had once fed. They were grown, successful, and radiating happiness. Tommy stepped forward, his eyes shining with emotion. "We've been looking for you for years," he said, his voice trembling just a little. "We never forgot what you did for us, Mary. You saved our lives." Lily joined her brother, her own eyes brimming with tears. "You were the first person who showed us kindness when we had nothing," she said softly. "You gave us hope when we thought the world had forgotten us." Mary could hardly believe what she was hearing. She reached out, her hands shaking, and Tommy took them in his own, holding them tightly. Lily wrapped her arms around Mary in a warm, heartfelt embrace. The three of them stood together in the garden, surrounded by neighbors who watched in amazement, not fully understanding the depth of what was happening. As the initial shock faded, Mary found her voice. "Look at you both," she whispered, her tears flowing freely now. "You've grown into such wonderful people. I always hoped you'd find happiness." Tommy smiled, squeezing her hands. "We owe it all to you, Mary. That night changed everything for us. We wanted to come back and thank you, to show you what your kindness made possible." The neighbors, sensing the importance of the moment, began to applaud, some wiping away their own tears. Mary, overwhelmed with emotion, realized that her small act of kindness all those years ago had come full circle. The children she had once helped were now standing before her, successful, grateful, and ready to share their story with the world. Tommy and Lily hugged Mary tightly, their arms wrapped around her as if they never wanted to let go. The years melted away in that embrace, and for a moment, Mary felt as if she were holding the same two children she had once comforted on a stormy night so long ago. Their voices trembled with emotion, and Mary could feel their gratitude in the way they clung to her. "We never forgot you," Lily whispered, her voice thick with tears. "You were the first person who showed us kindness when we had nothing. You gave us hope when we thought there was none left." Mary's own tears fell freely, her heart swelling with a mixture of joy and disbelief. She had often wondered what had become of the two orphans she had fed that night, but she had never dared to imagine a reunion like this. She looked at Tommy, now a grown man, his eyes shining with the same warmth and determination she remembered from his childhood. Tommy took a deep breath, steadying himself before he spoke. "That meal you gave us, Mary, it changed everything. We were lost, scared, and hungry. We didn't know where to go or what to do. But you didn't just feed us. You made us feel seen. You made us believe that there were still good people in the world." He went on to explain how, after that night, he and Lily had found the courage to seek help. With the few dollars Mary had given them, they were able to buy some food and find shelter for a few nights. Eventually, a kind social worker noticed them and helped them get placed with a loving foster family. It wasn't always easy, but they had each other. And they had the memory of Mary's kindness to guide them. We worked hard in school, Tommy continued, his voice steady and proud. We wanted to make something of ourselves to honor the chance you gave us. I started my own business after college, and Lily, well, she's a doctor now. She helps children who are going through the same things we did. Lily smiled through her tears, nodding. Every time I help a child, I think of you, Mary. I think of how you made us feel safe, even if it was just for one night. You inspired me to do the same for others. Mary listened, her hands trembling as she held theirs. She could hardly believe what she was hearing. The small act of kindness she had offered so many years ago had blossomed into something extraordinary. She had given 2 children hope, and in turn they had dedicated their lives to helping others. But Tommy and Lily hadn't come just to share their story. Tommy reached into his pocket and pulled out a small shiny set of keys. He pressed them into Mary's hand, closing her fingers around them gently. We bought you a new house right here in town, Tommy said, his voice full of love and gratitude. You deserve the world for what you did for us. It's just down the road with a big garden and a porch where you can sit and watch the sunset. We wanted to give you a place where you can rest and enjoy the life you've given to so many. Mary stared at the keys in disbelief, her mouth opening and closing as she tried to find the words. She had never expected anything in return for her kindness, and the thought of such a generous gift was almost too much to bear. Lily squeezed Mary's hand, her eyes shining. And there's more. We've set up a fund in your name to help other children in need, just like you helped us. Every year, children who are struggling will get the support they need: food, shelter, education, because of you. Your kindness will keep changing lives, long after today. Mary was speechless. Tears streamed down her face as she realized the full impact of her actions. She had always believed in the power of kindness, but she had never imagined that her small gesture would ripple outwards, touching not just 2 lives but countless others. The neighbors who had gathered around watched in awe, some wiping away their own tears. They had always known Mary as a kind and generous soul, but now they saw just how far her compassion had reached. As the sun began to set, casting a golden glow over the garden, Mary hugged Tommy and Lily once more. She felt a deep sense of peace, knowing that her life had mattered, that her kindness had made the world a better place. And as she looked at the keys in her hand and the faces of the 2 people she had once saved, she knew that love and compassion truly could change the world. Word of Mary's story spread quickly throughout the small town, carried by neighbors who had witnessed the helicopter's arrival and the emotional reunion in her garden. At first, it was just a few curious visitors who stopped by the diner, hoping to catch a glimpse of the woman whose kindness had changed 2 lives so dramatically. But soon the story reached local newspapers, then radio stations, and eventually, people from neighboring towns began to visit as well. The diner, once just a cozy spot for regulars, became a symbol of hope and compassion. People came from all walks of life, some just to shake Mary's hand, others to share their own stories of hardship and kindness. Many left inspired, determined to help someone in need, just as Mary had done all those years ago. The walls of the diner became covered with thank you notes, drawings from children, and letters from people whose lives had been touched by Mary's story. The owner even hung a plaque by the door, calling it Mary's Corner, a reminder to everyone who entered that a single act of generosity could change the world. Despite all the attention, Mary remained as humble as ever. She continued to work her shifts, pouring coffee and serving meals with the same gentle smile she always had. When reporters asked her about her act of kindness, she would simply shrug and say, "I just did what anyone should do." You never know how a small act of kindness can change someone's life. She never sought praise or recognition. Her joy came from knowing she had made a difference. Tommy and Lily became regular visitors, often bringing their own children to meet Mary. The children would sit at the same corner booth where their parents had once eaten their first warm meal in days, listening wide-eyed as Mary told them stories about their mom and dad's childhood. Tommy's son, a bright-eyed boy with his father's smile, once asked Mary, "Did you know you were saving my dad's life that night?" Mary just smiled and patted his hand, her heart full. The fund that Tommy and Lily had set up in Mary's name quickly grew, thanks to donations from people who had been moved by her story. The Mary's Hope Fund provided food, shelter, and educational support to hundreds of children in need. Local schools and churches partnered with the fund, organizing food drives and mentorship programs. Volunteers from the community stepped up, offering their time and resources to help children who, like Tommy and Lily, had nowhere else to turn. Mary was often invited to speak at community events, but she always kept her message simple. Kindness doesn't have to be grand, she would say. Sometimes it's just a warm meal, a gentle word, or a helping hand. You never know how far it will go. Her words resonated with everyone who heard them, and soon small acts of kindness began to ripple through the town. Neighbors checked in on each other more often, local businesses donated meals to those in need, and children learned the importance of compassion from an early age. As the years passed, Mary's life was transformed in ways she had never imagined. She moved into the new house Tommy and Lily had given her, a cozy home with a big garden and a porch where she could watch the sunset. She spent her days tending to her flowers, baking treats for the diner, and volunteering with the fund that bore her name. But through it all, she remained the same gentle, caring woman she had always been. Every time Mary saw a child in need, she remembered that rainy night so many years ago. She remembered the fear and hunger in Tommy and Lily's eyes, and the way their faces lit up when she offered them food and warmth. She knew that her small act of kindness had echoed through generations, touching lives she would never even know. And so, Mary continued to live her life with an open heart, always ready to help those who needed it most. She understood better than anyone that kindness is a gift that keeps on giving, and that even the smallest gesture can change the world. As the sun set over her little town, Mary would often sit on her porch, listening to the laughter of children playing nearby, and smile, grateful for the chance to make a difference, and hopeful that her story would inspire others to do the same. If you found this story inspiring, don't forget to hit the like button, subscribe to our channel, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss another heartwarming story. Share this video with your friends and let's spread kindness together.